Welcome back to BatFacts. In 2001, two legendary creators were brought together with the ambitious task of revitalizing The Dark Knight. In the middle of an 8-year gap between movies and the comic book industry going into a tailspin, Jeph Loeb and Jim Lee would take over the main Batman title for a year-long, 12-issue run that would redefine the character, reaffirm his most important moments and characters, and introduce a new status quo. This episode of BatFacts, I'm talking about Batman Hush. In the year 2000, following the finale of the lengthy and ambitious No Man's Land crossover, Denny O'Neil stepped down as editor of the Batman titles after a monumental 14-year run that produced hundreds of Batman comics, including such modern classics as Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, Year One, Death in the Family, and Nightfall, to name a few. Needless to say, the next editor to come on board had big shoes to fill. To make matters worse, the comic book industry as a whole was also in the midst of a monumental crash. The early 90s comic boom, led by comics such as Jim Lee's X-Men #1, which sold between 7.5 and 8 million copies in 1991. By the way, to put that into perspective, 2019's highest-selling comic, Detective No. 1000, also featuring a primary cover by Lee, sold just over 500,000. The boom was further galvanized by both the death of Superman and the Image Comics mutiny in 1993, and began to erode towards the end of the decade, hitting record lows in 2001. Incoming Batman Group editor Bob Schreck had the unenviable position of not only following Denny O'Neil, but taking over during a time when sales industry-wide were cratering. Bob began putting projects together not just to improve sales of the Batman titles, but projects designed to reinvigorate the industry itself, to welcome back lapsed readers, or invite new readers with the stories of popular characters by superstar creative teams. First out of the gate under Schreck's watch was filmmaker and podcaster Kevin Smith's reboot of Green Arrow, followed by Frank Miller's unbelievably hyped sequel to Dark Knight Returns, the ultimately disappointing Dark Knight Strikes Again. But the most lasting contribution from Schreck's time as editor was the team-up suggested by DC editorial art director Mark Chiarello, for a project that, because of its top-secret nature, came to be known as Hush. On the writing side of this epic team-up was Jeph Loeb, already a fan favorite among Batman fans for his Long Halloween and Dark Victory maxi-series with artist Tim Sale. Coming off of Dark Victory and doing more screenwriting for shows like Smallville, Loeb was unsure he wanted to tackle another Batman project when Schreck originally pitched it, but he quickly signed on when he heard who the artist would be for this proposed team-up. One of the biggest names in comics, Jim Lee is currently DC's publisher and chief creative officer, but in 2000 he had just sold his Wildstorm Studios, established under the Image Comics banner, to DC in hopes that stepping away from the business side would free up time to focus on art. Lee had gained a reputation for gorgeous artwork at an inconsistent schedule. To prove naysayers wrong, and to win a $100 bet with DC executive editor Mike Carlin, he wanted to do a book in his new home DC on a monthly schedule, and his first choice was The Dark Knight. Schreck and DC had their team in place, and Loeb and Lee began working on the project in secret. The project was given an unusually long amount of prep time before the announcement was made. Over a year, Lee beams in the collection's intro. "Don't schedule us. Don't tell anybody we're doing this. It's a secret," Loeb would recall telling Schreck and Batman A Definitive History. As Lee completed pages, he would write the word Hush along the top of the page, an indication of the project's secretive nature, and eventually, it would become the name of the series' antagonist. It begins here heralds issue 608's front cover with a back-to-basics trade dress, and the story that begins within reads something like a Batman Greatest Hits album. With many writers approaching Batman trying to think outside the box and come at Dark Knight from a bold and exciting new angle, Hush seemed to do its best to reestablish exactly what the box was. Who is Batman in 2003? Where does he stand with his cast of allies and villains? What parts of his history matter to him the most? The book by design was created to answer these questions, reintroduce Batman, and give the best possible jumping-on point for new readers. It almost reads like one of DC's old Who's Who books, tied together into a story. In fact, in many of the collected versions of the book, the story begins with an updated 2-page origin recap. What follows is a winding, sprawling, notoriously hard to summarize tale full of twists, turns, and red herrings that introduces new characters, reimagines old ones, and contains cameos from everyone from Amanda Waller in Gotham, then President Lex Luthor in Washington, D.C., the League of Shadows in North Africa, and even Crypto, the Superdog, in Metropolis. Each issue typically focuses on an important aspect of Batman's mythology, and all flashbacks are done in a hazy watercolor style. Loeb had already left his mark on Batman with a pair of 13-issue maxi-series that spun their way through nearly all of Batman's rogues gallery and allies, the aforementioned Long Halloween and Dark Victory. But this would be Lee's first trip to Gotham, and the onus on reinvigoration gave Lee a unique opportunity to add his own personal flair to character designs. Stopping short of providing an entirely new style guide for Batman, as he would do company-wide in 2011 as part of their New 52 reboot, many characters saw modern redesigns such as the Huntress that have become de facto standards for the characters. Nowhere is this more evident than the first villain Batman encounters in Hush, a much more animalistic version of Killer Croc than we have ever seen before. Appearing much more like his Lego Batman movie version, this appearance is explained by being poisoned by a toxin that worsens his condition. After tussling with Croc and saving a young hostage, the ransom is pilfered by Catwoman, who plays a major role in Hush. Hush explores the relationship between Batman and Catwoman and putting them closer than they ever have been up until that point. With a burgeoning romance between the two, and Bruce eventually revealing his identity to Selina and inviting her into the Batcave as an ally. This was a turning point for Selina as a character, who had always toed the line between villain and uneasy ally, keeping her an ally from that point forward. Her costume design follows the Brubaker Darwin Cook design established a year prior. The plot of Hush is set into motion when Batman, while chasing down Catwoman for the pilfered ransom, has his grappling rope cut and fractures his skull. Hush notably takes place during a time when Barbara Gordon was in her Oracle persona, helping Batman from behind the scenes. She quickly dispatches Huntress and an auto-piloted Batmobile to save Bruce, but not before a moment reminiscent of this scene from 1989's Batman film plays out. As with many artists doing a run on Batman, Lee designed an all-new Batmobile for the series, which takes cues from older iterations like a bat-shaped battering ram up front and dual rear fins, along with sleek new features like gull-wing doors. Throughout the series, we also see a new Batwing, Batcycle, and Batboat. One essential ingredient of any Batman epic is a moment of unadulterated badassery. In Hush, as Alfred attempts to tend to his fractured skull, an unconscious Bruce Wayne's only movement is a finger that begins to tap. In Morse code, Bruce taps out the name Thomas Elliot, who we learn is an old friend of Bruce's and a surgeon. Elliot is brought in to save Bruce along with old flame Chandra Kinsolving, and thanks to their efforts, Bruce makes a miraculous recovery. Along with Batman and Catwoman's romance, the primary focus of Hush is the unfolding mystery of who's pulling the strings, and spurring Batman's rogues gallery into action. All readers are given for the first few chapters are the occasional reminder of an Aristotle-quoting, bandaged-faced man, watching from the shadows, whose identity remains a mystery right until the end. Paul Levitz came to me at the time and said Batman hadn't had any new toys in the box since Ra's al Ghul more than 20 years earlier, said Loeb, clearly forgetting about characters like Harley Quinn and Bane. From there, the story moves to the city of Metropolis for another necessary ingredient to any Batman epic, a battle with Superman. This time, the Big Blue Boy Scout is his mind corrupted by Poison Ivy. Batman is aided in his defeat of Superman by a kryptonite ring. He was entrusted with this ring in Action Comics number 654 from 1990, as a contingency plan should Superman ever be compromised, as he was here. This battle is also the origin of the now famous quote regarding the true difference between Batman and Superman. If Clark wanted to, he could use his super speed and squish me into the cement. But I know how he thinks. Even more than kryptonite, he's got one big weakness. Deep down, Clark's essentially a good person. And deep down, I'm not. Along with Superman and Krypto, the move to Metropolis also facilitates cameos from the Daily Planet publisher Perry White, who is thoughtfully likened to Batman ally James Gordon, and Lois Lane, whose dialogue is a nod to Margot Kidder's portrayal in the 1978 Richard Donner film.
There's only one P in rapist. Lois Lane, say hello to Clark Kent. Told you one P.
Back in Gotham, Bruce and Selina attend the opera with Thomas Elliot and longtime ally Dr. Leslie Tompkins. The opera they attend is the Italian classic Pagliacci, which is sabotaged by Harley Quinn in a scene that recalls this classic scene of the Joker sabotaging Pagliacci from the original 1966 Batman TV show. This same scene would also inspire the Joker's bank robbery mask in Nolan's The Dark Knight years later. After Thomas Elliot chases Harley Quinn to retrieve his prized jade pendant, we next see Thomas lying in an alley, with the clown prince of crime, the Joker, making his first appearance in the story, standing over his body. The entire next chapter of the story is a meditation on Joker and Batman's tragic history, with a focus on why Batman has never killed the Joker. Functioning as essentially a Joker's greatest hits collection, this issue has since been reprinted in later printings of The Greatest Joker Stories Ever Told, and contains Jim Lee painted watercolor recreations of the death of Jason Todd from Death in the Family, the crippling of Barbara Gordon from Killing Joke, the shooting of Sarah Essen from No Man's Land, and even the previous issue's killing of Thomas Elliot. Joker is saved, ironically, when Batman is talked down by James Gordon. The twist here, as alluded to by a coin-flipping Hush at the end of the issue, is the Joker is actually innocent. At this point, the clues left for the mystery of Hush's identity begin to point to Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, who is shown to have been rehabilitated and whose unscarred face and bald head look a lot like he did in Dark Knight Returns. This is one of several red herrings to throw readers off as the mystery continues to progress. The focus of the next chapter is Batman's original partner, Dick Grayson. As they investigate a seemingly unrelated Riddler bank robbery together, Bruce recalls his decision to take in Dick Grayson and train him as a crime fighter. During their team-up, we're treated to a precursor to Lee's epic Batcave foldout from All-Star Batman, a 2-page spread of the Batcave's garage containing nearly every film and television Batmobile up until that point, including the 66 TV show, the animated series, and Batman Forever. During Batman and Nightwing's drive in the Batmobile, many of Gotham's street signs pay homage to notable Batman creators such as Sheldon Park, a tribute to Sheldon Moldoff, Aparo Expressway, in tribute to Jim Aparo, and the amusing direction Just Past the Denny's on Adams, a tribute to famous comic team of Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. Later on in Hush, David Mazzucchelli and Carmine Infantino also get the street name treatment. While investigating, Batman finds traces of ash that is indigenous to the famed Lazarus Pits, setting up not only another change in scenery for the story, but another classic trope of an epic Batman story: the desert sword fight with nemesis Ra's al Ghul, and an encounter with Al Ghul's estranged daughter Talia. Batman's inner monologue recounts the story of he and Ra's al Ghul's first meeting, which was in Batman 232 from 1971. Batman questions Al Ghul about the recent use of one of his Lazarus Pits, which have been known to bring people back from the dead. Ra's is unable to help with the mystery, but replies to Batman, "Ask yourself, detective, who in your life would wish to come back from the dead?" Wizard magazine published an exclusive 6-page interlude to the story in their issue 0, which slows the story to a welcome calm, featuring Batman, Alfred, and Catwoman back at the Batcave. In the scene that recalls Brave and the Bold number 197 from 1983, Catwoman sees the toll on Batman's body that crime fighting has taken, intercut with watercolored flashback of the injuries occurring. In the next issue of the series proper, they're interrupted by a then-current Robin, Tim Drake, who attacks Catwoman, supposedly unaware of her and Batman's new relationship. As they fight, Batman's monologue retells Tim Drake's origin, the first Robin to actively pursue the role as opposed to being a victim of circumstance. When Selina leaves, she is accosted by Huntress in the grips of a mind-altering fear toxin. This also brings out a nursery rhyme-spouting scarecrow, a characteristic Loeb also employed during his long Halloween series. When Batman and Robin step into the fray to assist Catwoman, their battle takes them to a small yet privately significant graveyard, leading to what is undoubtedly the biggest bombshell of the entire run. When the bandaged Hush steps out of the shadows and removes his bandages to reveal himself as Jason Todd, the Robin who died years ago. As he removes his disguise and puts a batarang to Tim Drake's neck, he mirrors a line from the last story before his death, 1988's Death in the Family, about life being a game, and this being one that Batman can't win. The penultimate issue of Hush deals with this revelation and explores Batman's greatest failure, the death of Jason Todd. For more on Jason's time as Robin and his controversial death, check out last episode. Over the course of their battle, Batman picks up on subtle clues. Jason never calls himself Jason, and never calls Batman Bruce. Batman discerns that his opponent is not actually, as he puts it, the Robin who died. Once the jig is up, Jason slowly melts into clay, literally slipping through Batman's fingers, revealing it was the shape-shifting clay face behind this particular deception. Years later, in Batman Annual number 25, this scene would be retconned that Jason and Clayface switched places at some point during the battle with Batman, making this Jason Todd's genuine return. More determined than ever to solve the mystery of who could be behind these increasingly personal and disturbing attacks, Batman consults with Oracle, who has discovered an implanted relay device in the Batcomputer, left by Batcave technician and mechanic Harold Allnut, first introduced in 1990's The Penguin Affair. Batman confronts the formerly mute trenchcoat-wearing Allnut, who apologizes for the deception, claiming that the man behind his recent troubles was also the man who has restored his body and his ability to speak. Just as he's about to finally reveal Hush's identity, shots ring out and Harold is killed. The final battle with Hush is about to begin. The final issue of the Hush storyline was the highest-selling comic book that year, and was released with 2 different group covers, commemorating the heroes and villains of this massive story. As Batman battles Hush, he continues to obsessively go over clues, although Tommy's jade pendant is in plain sight. Come on, Bruce. And Hush's identity is at long last revealed to be a vengeful and very alive Tommy Elliott. Batman is saved by former Hush red herring Harvey Dent, betraying the alliance made between Elliott and the rest of Batman's rogues gallery, and Hush escapes. In the weeks following Hush's defeat, Batman figures out Tommy Elliott's plot, and the clues eventually lead back to, of all people, the Riddler, originally thought to have been left out, who had discovered Batman's secret identity and went about using both his allies and adversaries in a plot to destroy him. During their final confrontation, Riddler breaks the fourth wall in the story, stating, "It started as a joke. You know, we had to keep it a secret." But as Batman points out, because a riddle that everyone knows the answer to is worthless to the Riddler, he remains bound to secrecy. In the story's final scene, the mounting uncertainty and a very poor choice of words from Catwoman lead Bruce and Selina to call off their romantic tryst, though it wouldn't be the last act of their torrid love affair. Hush was a massive success for DC, quintupling sales of the Batman title and leaving a legacy on the Dark Knight that can be seen in much of what followed it. Beyond setting a new status quo for Batman, Hush would leave threads such as Harvey Dent's rehabilitation and Jason Todd's empty grave that would be picked up from later stories like Face to Face and Under the Hood, respectively. Thomas Elliott's Hush persona continued as a villain for several more stories, most notably Paul Dini's Heart of Hush, where Thomas's jealousy of Bruce and skills as a surgeon leads him to alter his own facial appearance to mimic Bruce. This also became a memorable side mission in Rocksteady Games' Arkham City, also penned by Dini. From a publishing standpoint, Hush is easily one of the most reprinted Batman stories. Along with the initial 12-issue publication, it was collected in 2 volumes of trade paperback, then several single book formats. Its purely inked artwork by Scott Williams is featured in Hush Noir, and in only Jim Lee's pencil edition in Hush Unwrapped. It was also given a prestigious oversized Absolute edition in 2011, and was reprinted in the Walmart-exclusive Batman Giant Digests. Its first issue, 608, has been reprinted several times in con-exclusive foil editions, and as part of the Dollar Comics and Beyond Watchmen lines. It even has its own coloring book. In 2019, Hush got the animated film treatment, directed by Justin Copeland, with an adapted screenplay by Ernie Altbaker. The film disappointingly deviated from the original comic story, changing the identity of Hush himself along with the roles of several of the key villains, and removing Jason Todd's plot entirely. It starred Jason O'Mara as Batman, along with real-life husband and wife team Jerry O'Connell and Rebecca Romijn as Superman and Lois Lane, respectively, and Super's Rainn Wilson as President Lex Luthor. We're going to leave it there. What was your favorite moment of Hush? Do you think the animated film did it justice? Discuss in the comments below. If you liked the video, please tell a friend who likes Batman, share it on your discussion forum of choice, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I'm on Instagram as BatFacts Videos, and be on the lookout for the next episode, where I'll be continuing the Robin series, talking about Carrie Kelly. Some bat time, same bat channel. Thanks for watching.